Wonderful. So let's kick off. Now the agenda for today. So you're all super welcome to this digital data gathering part 2. And today we'll have 2 items in our agenda. So the first half of the session will be talking about how to choose the best mobile data gathering tool for your organization. And then we'll have a break, do some physical exercise, maybe if you want to. And then after that, I'll show how group data gathering tool OMBEA works and how you can install it to your computer as well. And then Väkiparta from International Solidarity Foundation, Solidarisuus, will be sharing her experiences with OMBEA. That will be interesting to hear some peer learning there. All right, let's start with the first part. And as said, I'm checking the group chat regularly. So whenever you have a question or comment or anything, just add it there, or then even open your microphone and ask a question. If there's something you don't understand or is too technical or whatever it is, then let's go for tackle that so that you can all follow the presentation. Great. Then the next one. Although we'll be now focusing primarily on choosing the tool, and this is very much a tool-centered. So what is the platform or tool that you're going to select? Of course, data collection is much wider. So starting from the design and planning and choosing the questions and then collecting the data and then going on further. So those of you who weren't participating in the previous session, I'll recommend, and those who were there, I'll recommend again reading some background material. For example, the handbook on data collection. Here it's a brilliant guidebook on data collection and describing the whole process. Also, here's the mobile data collection from Dimachi. And then there's also about responsible use of data. So these books, and there are many more, or guidelines, please have a look at them as well. I'll definitely share all these slides so you can also get the links and find this information. Yes. Then one more slide that was from the previous session, just a refresher. So we were talking last time about different scenarios. So in the scenario A, I just made them up completely. But the scenario A is a scenario where there's maybe a small organization or an organization just starting to use the data collection, so their needs are probably pretty different. Maybe they have just one project and they are okay with using fairly basic data collection tool and maybe utilizing Excel for the data analysis, and that's completely fine. Then there's a scenario B, where there might be a little bit larger organization or an organization wanting to go forward and having multiple projects and multiple teams, maybe in multiple countries, having separate projects. And then there's a need for a little bit more, for example, user management. And maybe they are not using Excel, but they would like to use some other visualization and analysis tool. And then there's scenario C, where this is going a step further again, having, again, multiple projects, much more users, and maybe they want to link the data collection tool and the data automatically to some other analysis software. If this sounds a little bit abstract, or what is it all about, don't worry, we'll be talking more in practical terms about this during the session. But the only thing I wanted to show this, the reason is that there are different organizations with different needs. And when we are talking about the best tool for data collection, for example, using mobile phones, then there isn't really a one answer. So instead of saying this is the best tool you can get, I'll be going through different aspects that you may want to pay attention to when selecting the tool. I'll also going to make recommendations for different kind of use cases, but in the end, it's obviously up to you to do the final decision. So let's go forward. And here's a selection of digital data collection tools for comparison. There are actually dozens of these, and that's why sometimes it's so difficult, because there's so many. So what would you choose in the end? Do you go through all of them and do intensive research, and or is there a way to make the decision quicker? So I've selected 6 quite well-known tools that are among the best ones for different use cases. And so these are the ones I'll be talking about, although there are many others as well. And let me see if I can get another poll. So here, now I'm launching a poll asking which of these tools have you tested or used before? And you can select more than one. So in your screen, you should be I should have added also none. And hi, Elizabeth, you just came in, so welcome. We have just started, so you haven't missed that much yet.
Oh, yes, Mika, Liike has not used any of these, but let me just then activate one. At least we can go onward.
Yeah, no problem. You can also not vote anything. That was my bad. So remember, always have the option none, none here. And so Elizabeth and Dembe, you just came in, so welcome. If you see the poll, you can respond to that. And you can use the chat to communicate. I'll now mute a couple of you. Betty, can you mute yourself? Let's share the results. And here they are. So there's been 1 for ACOFlow, 1 for SurveyCTO, 1 for PoiMapper, and 6 for Copo Toolbox. And I think the rest haven't used any tool. All right. No problem. So we'll get to know a little bit more about this. Let's stop sharing the results. And actually, I don't have a separate slide for this, but or maybe I have. Just a second. I just realized that if quite many of you haven't used any digital data collection tool earlier, then I'll also show this slide. So how digital data collection or gathering works in the first place. So let's rerun this quickly. So typically data is collected using paper and pen in the field, visiting maybe schools or households. And the enumerators are collecting the data and having piles of papers, and then somebody's punching that in maybe their computer. And then visiting from household to another. Now, when we are talking about digital data collection, that typically means using a mobile phone, so getting rid of the paper, and for example, using Kobo Toolbox, which is one of the tools we are talking about here. So in order to create the survey, then you need to access the Kobo Toolbox website, and there you can create the online survey, just as you are, for example, entering the Facebook or Google or anything. You can use that service online. So the Kobo Toolbox or some other digital data collection tools also works online. And there you can create the survey, which is here now, the green one as a symbol. And then you download it, you make it available for the persons who will be visiting the field. And now they have it in their mobile phone. And then they go from one place to another, collect a lot of surveys, and maybe they don't even have access to internet. It doesn't matter, because all the data, all the surveys will be saved to their mobile phone. And once they get access to the internet, then this data, which used to be separate papers filled in with pen and paper, now instead of these digital filled in surveys will be sent back to the Kobo Toolbox or some other service. And then you can download them to your computer, or using that same online service, create all kinds of graphs to show the data, how it is, and start analyzing it. And you may also want to then share the results, maybe just using email and sending those nice graphs on PowerPoint or Excel or so. Or then you might want to directly link the data which is coming in to your platform, directly link it to another separate data visualization tool like Power BI, and then you can share it, just a link, and then anyone having the link can go there and see how the data is presented, and can also inspect the data. So this was a quick rerun of how mobile data collection works. If this was clear to you, please write in the group chat, yes, all clear, or if there was something that didn't make sense, let's tackle it right away. So I'll be now looking at the chat window. Yeah, Maria was asking that are the respondents, for example, if you visit a household and there's a family, and then you're interviewing maybe the number of children that they have in the family, how they are responding. Yes, they are responding orally without any of their own devices. And then the enumerator is just punching in the survey responses. It also might be that, and there are tools how to do SMS surveys, then you might not visit any households or any schools or wherever you go personally, but rather send the survey as an SMS, and then they can respond back with SMS. That's also an option. And then Senja was talking about if you could share the results also by text or WhatsApp if doesn't want email. Yes, certainly those graphs could also be copied to WhatsApp. A very good point. And the SMS option is not available for Kobo Toolbox. But now I also saw that Ari was asking about the price, the average cost of annual use. I will get back to that, and if not, then remind me. Now there are still some people joining. Maybe they thought that this was 1 o'clock. So hi, Joel. You just came in, so join the session. So now I'll go back to where I left. Just a second. Yes, and now the next step is to look at the different features of these tools. And so what should you looking after when you compare these tools? And I've made this kind of a list of what should you look at when selecting your mobile data gathering tool. And here it's a pretty long list, but it's just a kind of summary. But we'll go through all of these one by one, and I explain what it means and why should you care about it, or why might you care about it. Maybe you don't need it, so then it's not useful. So let's just skip this one and go one by one. First, the form editor. So this is the editor that is online and where you actually create the surveys. And I've just taken screenshots of how the form editor looks like. And for example, up here is Kobo Toolbox. And I would then write my question here, up here, and then select whether it's whether there's a selection list where I can select one, or maybe it is just text, or maybe audio. I can also record audio, or maybe the response will be a number, like what is your age, or date and time, or so. And there's I'll mute. Then this one is from Magpie. So it looks the same, but slightly different, but still you see the familiar options of the type of response. Here is one from PoiMapper. Again, you can see the same options, so text, integer, date, time of day, Boolean, yes or no. So the same options are typically available in all these tools. And here you would give the form name, and here you can see the structure of the survey. In this part, this is ComCare. So they have a little bit different view, but again, you can see here you can select what type of question it will be. Is it text or number? You can display the text and the question and so on. So pretty much all the tools have fairly similar kind of way to create the surveys. There are some differences and some are easier to use than the others. So I've put here, this is a bit of subjective, which is easy to use and what is not. but I put here that Copo Toolbox is, for example, it's very clean, very easy to use. It's very good to start with. Survey CTO, in my mind, is quite easy to use as a form editor as well. MacPy, PoiMapper, and Aquaflow are okay. You can definitely learn them, no problem, but they are not so user-friendly as the others. And ComCare is somewhere between. If you have never seen this kind of a tool being used, so then I can actually show you quickly how it looks like in practice. So I'll make a new share here, and will I find... I hope it is this one. No, not quite. So let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. Can you now see the Copo Toolbox window? Is it currently being shared?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so let's try again. I'll do it like this. How about now?
Yes.
We can see.
Okay, good. So just to show how it works, so this is Copo Toolbox now. And if I wanted to make a new survey, then I would just click new. Then I can use a template, kind of pre-existing surveys, or starts from the scratch. So I'll start from the scratch. Then I'll enter the project name. So this is, let's say, Fingo Powerbank. And description for training purpose. Then I could put some sector if I like. This is just for those Copo Toolbox people to see where it's being used. So that's not so interesting. And now this is a clean table, like a clean sheet. And when I start, now I can add questions. So I click plus. And now I can maybe ask, what is your name? And I pressed enter, so that's my question. And then to that question, I want to give text answer, so not number or decimal or something like that, but obviously a question. I could also put a question hint if that would clarify the question for the enumerator. So that was easy. Then I'll add another question. What is your age? And to that, I would probably want to have a full number. Then if I would ask, what is your height? Then I would use maybe decimal numbers. And what else do we have here? Then I could also maybe take a photo. So I'll add here photo. So point and shoot, use the camera to take a photo. So when it is coming to this point, then the person would be take the mobile phone, take a photo of the person, and then it would be saved as part of this survey. You could also take a point. So using the GPS in the phone, you could get the location of where you were collecting this data, and then later on you could put this on the map. So let's say you would be, or the people or your team in the field would be mapping schools or water points. So it would be then good to take the location of that water source and then maybe take a photo and then say, for example, is it functional? Is the water clean or something like this? So there are quite a lot of opportunities here that go beyond what you could do on paper. And then once I've done all the questions here, I can save it, and that's it. I could preview the form here already and live. So here we can see the Fingo Powerbank. What's your name? What's your age? And now I'm on my laptop, so I'm not going to take the photo. But as you can see here, I could also point where I am now that I'm not using my mobile. So here's the location. All right. So this was a quick look at the how it basically works, the very basics. But as you can see, it's fairly straightforward. Let's go back here. So this is something that is fairly similar to all of it. There's much more functionality here. Then you can do skip logic, for example, that if the respondent is saying, are you a male or female? And if the person is male, then you would not ever ask properly that have you ever been pregnant, but it would skip that. So it would use skip logic. The second feature you would probably want to see is the data collection methods. So in most of the time, the surveys will be downloaded to your mobile phone. I cannot show it because I'm using my mobile phone as a webcam, so I'm just showing you my empty hand. I'll use this iPad instead now. But in some cases, you also want to share the survey as a web link. So in case some of the information was collected with laptops, or you would need to type in a lot of data, maybe from a paper or somewhere, then you would use your laptop because it would be easier and quicker to type in stuff. So just check that if you need that the tool also supports sharing the surveys with web links. And here Copper Toolbox is doing very good job. So there are multiple ways of sharing the survey, even embedding it to a website. Although the most typical option is using Android application. In most cases, I think nowadays all these tools that we are comparing, they do have this website or web link option. It wasn't so maybe a couple of years ago, but check it if you need it. Then thirdly, platform compatibility. So every single tool is compatible with Android devices. That's secured. And in most cases, that's the only thing you need. Some are also compatible natively so that you can actually download an app to your phone with Apple devices. But even then, if you didn't have application to iOS, then like iPhones, then you could use the web link and use it in with a browser instead. Although then using it offline might be a problem. So there are also Symbian devices and Java phones, but in most cases, I think 95%. Okay, Karita, you needed to go away and you'll come back again. Okay. Android devices are almost always there, and they all work with Android devices. But in case you would have a specific reason to use iOS or Symbian or Java phones, you could check it as well. Then this is pretty important. stuff, because integration to other apps. And as we saw, you can always get the data available in the tool that you have. So for example, Compo Toolbox, when people are in the field and they are submitting the surveys, the person who has access to that web service, so the web platform where we created the survey, they can see the results there and they can see the data. And then, for example, with Compo Toolbox, you can always download that data and open it in Excel. And in Excel, you can do all kinds of calculations and modifications and create graphs and so on. But what if you wanted to link the data that is coming into some third-party place? For example, Google Sheets or some Power BI visualization tool and so on. In order to do that, then you would need to have that link. So usually this gets lightly technical, and you might not need it in the beginning, but just to know that it exists, typically there's a connection called Zapier, which makes it really easy. When you add a Zapier connection, then all the data that is coming from the mobile phones from the field, when it comes to your platform, then it's automatically forwarded to the third-party software. And here is a survey CTO, and it has a direct link to Google Spreadsheets, as you can see. So we could add a connection, and then here you can see a screenshot of a graphic dashboard showing the data coming in and being automatically continuously being updated when the data is coming in. And this can be created using the completely free Google Sheets. There's actually a link down here that you can later on go. There's a technique to use Google Sheet as a dashboard. And then you can share the link to that dashboard with some people, and they can go and see how the data looks like. So there are also free tools to do this, but in order to do this, that it works automatically, you need to have that connection. And of these tools, PoiMapper, CompCare, MacPy, and Survey CTO, they do have that ability to link to third-party tools, but Compo Toolbox, although in many ways it's a great tool and it's free, it doesn't have. So you always need to download it to your local computer and then use local, like Excel, to use it. So there's no automation, nor Aquaflow has it. This might not be a problem, but at least pay attention to this. Now I'm checking, are you still there? Are you following this thing? Are things okay? Did you have any question at this point? We'll go through a few more features. So now I'm staring at my chat. Okay, you have find this very interesting. Good. Anyone else there? Just use the chat window, just say okay if you are kicking, following. Makaya and Audi is there as well. Senia is still there, good. Joel? Great. Laura is alive and kicking. And Valtteri, hang on. We'll have a break as well at some point. So let's then continue. Then the next one is shareable online dashboards. And these are available in Aquaflow and Magpie at least. And so they have these tools, they have integrated kind of a dashboard that you can utilize already in the same platform. So instead of taking the data out somewhere else, you can already do some dashboards. And here you can see the screenshot of a website which Magpie creates. So these are fairly easy to create, and then you can share the link with maybe with the communities or with the stakeholders or with your team members, and then they can follow what's happening when the data is coming in. And so it's pretty nice. It makes it easy. The kind of the good side of this that it makes it easy. The maybe slight downside of it is that it's much less versatile than some other tools. So you might find it a bit restricted if you want to do more advanced calculations and different things there. So yeah, easy, but this is not the core functionality of any of the tools. So it's a bit of a sidekick. With Aquaflow, it is a separate integrated software called Aqualumen, where you can visualize it, and then you need to pay separately for that. But as said, you can also do these dashboards with a little bit of more manual work using, for example, Google Sheets or some other third-party software, as long as you can get the data out. But some of them have it, and if you are interested, then at least Aquo and Magpie has this option. Then potentially really important part, and as said in the beginning, it might be that your organization has only one project or two projects, and then managing the users is not that big a deal. So I'm showing here some different boxes, and if these are all different projects, so then when you create a survey, or maybe 2 or 3 surveys within that project, and then there's a team in the field, when you share these surveys, they can all access the surveys of that project. But what happens if you are handling or managing several projects? Maybe you have 10 different projects in different countries, and they all have different teams, and they all have different surveys. If you still then keep them all in the same one place, then you have lots of different kind of users all having the access to the surveys of all the projects, and it gets quite difficult then. Probably the field in the team, they start accessing surveys and filling in surveys that they shouldn't, and then you come into the conclusion, okay, we need some user management, so we need to separate that this team only get access to the surveys that are relevant for them, and for example, these users can only fill in information, but there's another user, for example, a team leader, who can see the incoming data and also make changes to that. And maybe there's a master user who can add more users or delete users or change passwords and so on. So this is called user management. And here's a screenshot from Survey CTO, where you can build teams, like separate teams, and then creating user roles and permissions. So as I said, maybe there's a some persons who can see everything. They can delete data, they can edit data, they can add users. Some users have a role of checking the data, but nothing else, and some who can only fill in the surveys. So here you can create those user roles and permissions, and then you can add users and give them different roles. So this works pretty well, for example, in Survey CTO. And in most cases you have it, except Copo Toolbox. So there, every time you create an account, that is only one account with one team or one space, and you cannot have separate spaces unless you create completely separate accounts. So in case you have, for example, 10 or 15 projects or even 5 projects, then you should be jumping to different accounts. It's a bit like having 5 different Facebook accounts or 5 different Google Gmail accounts. Whereas with other tools, you can actually have only one account and then have those separate teams, as if you had different folders for different files. Yes, is that okay? The pricing here then differs quite a lot. I will come back to that. But so user management, in some cases it has been done clearly, in some a little bit more difficult, but still it works. For example, the Survey CTO, it flows pretty well. PoiMapper also has good user management. But with all the other tools except Copo Toolbox, you can get it done, certainly. Then interesting part that you may not need at all, but if you need it, then this is very important. And that's called case management. In most cases, when you collect the data, so here's my super big mobile phone. When you collect the data and you send the data away, it is the same as filling in a paper, and when you give it out to the office, when you return it to the office, you have no access to that anymore. You have given it out, you have submitted it, that's it. You have an empty phone. But with case management, it's actually a bit like customer relations management system. So what does it mean that, for example, with ComCare, that is very good at case management, is that you can first register, for example, a new patient. This is with maternal and newborn health. This is just an example. When you register the patient, you fill in the name and age and stuff like that. My daughter is popping in. And once you have, then there's a record in your phone. And then you can later on come back to that and maybe add more information or edit the information. Maybe you can do a referral to that patient and later on come back. So actually you are continuously building more and more information of those people. So it's a bit like maybe in a health clinic, you could have the whole list of patients and what has been happening to them and when they have been visiting and what kind of matters they have been talking about, and all of that running on your mobile phone. And so that's called case management. There are many other examples where you could do that. And here ComCare is easily the best one. As you can see with Aquaflow, you cannot do that. With PoiMapper, Magpie and Survey CTO, you can do them, but it's not really the main function, and that can be a bit difficult. Whereas ComCare is really actually that's what they do a lot. So for that kind of cases, look at case management and be aware of that. In Copo Toolbox, it doesn't exist at all. All right. Then support and training. This is just a headline here. All of them have online resources. All of them have some videos. So you should be quite okay with that. If you want to have separate like online support, or you want to phone in your that you want the responses quickly, then you usually in the paid services you have that. So they say that we'll be back in 24 hours to every question you have. But see what kind of a support and possibly training needs you have, and negotiate those and check what they are about. Great. Then Ari was asking about the costs, and maybe many of you are interested in those. So this was something that I already showed you during the last session. So here are different scenarios. So low scenario, it's a single project, and the estimation is that you have 40 mobile workers. Then there's medium with 5 countries or 5 projects, like they are separate ones, as we discussed. And then the high is 20 countries or 20 projects, like separate teams, and you have lots of mobile workers there. When you look at this, and this was done in 2019, so always check the updated ones. In the low scenario where you only have one project team, ComCare starts with 3,000 per year, Data Winners with 1,200, Survey CTO a bit more than 2,000, Gobo is completely free, Magpie 5,000, and Aquaflow 9,000 per year. And then the medium, as you can see here. So please pay attention that, for example, with ComCare, when you go to 5 projects, the price doesn't change at all. But for example, with Survey CTO, you actually, instead of 1 project, you multiply it with 5 times. Every time you have a new project, it adds up around 2,000. Well, there here dollars. So where Survey CTO is cheaper with the low 1 project, when you go to high, it's already double the price that ComCare and lots of others. So depending on the scale you are going, see how the price differs. In any case, if you have large projects, the cost of digital data collection is not that big. It's quite small in the end. But yeah, in those are the ones. And as said, Copo Toolbox also, although it has some limitation, it's free. And the good side of it is that if you are training also your local partners to use, for example, Survey CTO or ComCare or Magpie or whatever, once the project ends, they rarely have the capability to continue paying for ComCare or Survey CTO or some other proprietary software. But with Copo Toolbox, no problem. They can continue. They don't need a credit card. They don't need a separate project. Yeah, just use it with the limitations, but still. So Senia is asking, do you expect the prices to increase or decrease in the future? You never know. In my previous workplace, we did this kind of analysis, and we went for Survey CTO because it was so good. Well, lots of features were great, and it also had a very affordable option. 1 month after that, they changed their pricing completely, and they became quite expensive in the end. So, but let's say that they are fairly stable. it just happened to us that they changed the pricing. Any questions about the costs? Just then we have summaries here. So just quick summaries. I'm not going to go through these all of them one by one, but I have summarized some highlights and some shortcomings for each of these tools. So, for example, Akvo Flow has this integrated data cleansing and visualization capabilities when combined with Akvo Lumen. As we said, they have these shareable dashboards. But then again, at least the last time I checked, Akvo didn't have web-based form sharing. They needed to have Gmail account for all the users. Typically, you don't need that. And no Zapier or Google Sheet integration, so you cannot get the data out. Then PoiMapper, it's pretty good, and it works. It's Finnish, so the developer team is in Espoo. So especially if you need to further develop something, that might be a good option when you can work directly with them. For example, Save Finland, they have been working directly with PoiMapper. The usability is not as clear and concise as with some other tools. And in some aspects, it's not fully finalized. I think the features are there, but there are a little bit of glitches here and there. But yeah, you can definitely get the job done. And I've been using PoiMapper in various cases quite a lot as well. So it's a credible tool. Now, ComCare, it's very strong on case management. It has advanced user and organizational management that we were talking about. It also has SMS and interactive voice response support. So you can also do mass SMS sending and SMS-based surveys and stuff like that. So it's a combination of different tools. But then it has the most features. It can also be a bit of a higher threshold to adopt, where Kobo Toolbox, for example, is pretty simple to start with. ComCare needs a bit more. It's understandable because the more features you have, typically it's not the easiest to start with. Magpie also has, they support SMS and voice data collection. They don't have case management in Magpie, and the user interface with the forms is not as fluent as, for example, with Survey CTO. But again, the news is that whichever tool that you get here, you probably get 95% of the job done always. So these are already very credible tools, all of them. And then Survey CTO, it is based on Kobo Toolbox originally, so it has been developed from that. So there's a lot of similarities between Kobo and Survey CTO, although Survey CTO has a lot more features. And I said it can automatically stream data to Google Sheets. It's pretty easy to use form builder, as in Kobo as well. It doesn't have the SMS or integrated voice features as ComCare and Magpie has. No integrated visualization dashboards, but it's pretty easy to link to, for example, Google Sheets. And then Kobo, it's free, open source, the only one here, completely free. It's widely used. It has clean user interface. does well with Android and web forms. But again, the limitations that we saw, you cannot connect with Zapier to other tools, and there's no really user management, no separate teams or user profiles available. Again, of course, you can add separate accounts, multiple accounts, and that can work well, but you don't have that uniform view over lots of different projects. Google Docs, Outi is saying that Google Docs also has possibilities to do forms and collect information. What are the issues there that is not recommended? Sure, yeah, you can do Google Forms, but it's much more limited, and you always use a browser to do that. So when you're doing actual mobile data gathering, where you can, for example, take photos, you can get the GPS coordinates, you can record audio, you can do quite a lot of skip logic, stuff like this. Then Google Docs, like the Google Forms, it's not up to the task. And Mokea is saying, in terms of data analysis capabilities, which tool you recommend? Well, the data analysis capabilities, as said, if you can get, and usually you can get the data out from that tool, then everything is, and you can use Excel, you can use Power BI, you can use whatever it is there, and then that works well. But if you would need to do it internally, all of them have, you can do some level with Survey CTO. You can do those shareable forms with MacBuy, and also some reporting with ComCare as well. But really going into the data analysis, I would always recommend get the data out, use Excel, use Google Sheets, or use some other data analysis tool to dig deeper. None of the ones that have there can go that deep. You can get the basics out, yes, but nothing more than that. And what about Microsoft Forms? Maria is asking. Yes, Microsoft Forms is pretty much the same. When you are sharing, doing pretty simple forms that you share with people, with their mobile phones, yes, that's an opportunity. But with Google Forms and also Microsoft Forms, it's not Google Forms, it's Google, no, I forgot it. Well, it's Forms anyway. So then you always need the live data connection. And in many cases where you are in the field, in the rural areas, then if you don't have that data connection, then it doesn't work. All of these tools, they always work offline. So you can be even a week going around with no internet connection at all. Everything is saved on your mobile phone, and once you submit it, when you get the connection, that works well. The data security when using Compo Toolbox free version. Now I need to check, but to the understanding that I have, it is good enough. It's secured connection, so it shouldn't be. And especially if you compare that to pen and paper forms, which are not secured in any way, it's pretty good. I can check the standards, but especially if you have you know, IT department something, they can check them. But I've never heard anything worrying from Copper Toolbox. So now the last thing, I'm putting this on a kind of a scale. This is just one way to look at it. But in terms of features, it's the x-axis here, and then the ease of use is y-axis. Now this is completely missing the price. But then I'm just putting this in slightly personal view here, but based on, I've tried all of these, checked all of these. So CommCare has by far the most features, especially it's strong on that case management, but it also has the SMS, it has IVR, it has Zapier connection, you name it. It doesn't miss anything. And then on the other hand, Copper Toolbox has least features, but is easiest to use, at least in small scale. And the others go a bit between. So personally, I like Survey City a lot. It's clean, it works well. It doesn't have the SMS and IVR, but otherwise it's pretty good. The only caution I have that if you have lots of separate teams, then you pay quite a lot. At least ask them if they are changing their pricing, but that can go a bit high. And then Akvo Flow, I'm not fan of it. It's too closed. There are some good features in that, and Akvo is doing brilliant job in many ways, but there are better options here, in my humble opinion. And PoiMapper and Magpie, they are also solid tools. Now Maria is talking about OMBEA. So OMBEA is then a separate thing. It's group data collection. It's not on mobile, so it's not included here. We will come back to that after break. So now we were only talking about the tools that are running on a mobile phone, and you can download the surveys there. Then we are talking about digital data collection, then of course there are other tools that are not mobiles. And of course then you can use SMS to do those, and you can do Microsoft Forms and Google Forms, and then group data collection, stuff like that. But this was purely on mobile data collection tools, and I wanted to focus on this because this is typically, yeah, ODK. So it's Jussi is talking about ODK, so Open Development Kit. Good point, and that's also open source software, and I haven't used that much. I actually should check it out. To my understanding, it's also open source. It's free, and it's pretty same as Copper Toolbox. But if any of you have tried ODK, check it out. But the point here, why we went through this, that whatever tool you are looking at, then now you are more equipped to check these aspects, because not knowing what to look for, how to compare is also a problem. But you can check the form editor, if it has web forms, the compatibility, the JPL linkage or integration to other tools, and blah, 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 all of this. Yeah, Betty is saying ODK is the same as Copper Toolbox, yeah. Thanks, Betty. Great, so this is the end of the first part. Then next we will go to group data gathering with OMBEA together with Solidarisus, so in collaboration. But before we go there, I'll stop here. And now, any questions? Anything unclear? How was this so far? We still have the 20 participants online, so it seems we didn't lose many. That's a good one. So I ask every one of you to comment in a way or another to the chat window. so that I can see that you are again alive and kicking, whether this was clear, whether something was particularly interesting or something was unclear. I'm all ears now. I'm just staring at the chat window and hearing from you. Okay, yeah, thanks. And while you are writing this, any comments? The tool is just one part. So whatever you choose, then there's a lot more to do, as many of you who have tried it. So there's a lot about how you introduce this tool to the team, how you train, how you give support, how do you define the questions so that they are clear questions, how you don't get too excited that now you can collect all kinds of data and end up having a huge form where you hire people and they just want to run away at the end. So how do you select them, the critical questions that you want to share? And also once you have collected, how you actually analyze them and how you put it into action. No matter how much data you collect, it doesn't matter unless it is actually put into use. So if it doesn't, if you don't share it with the people you are collecting it from, it doesn't benefit them. So you need to close the loop to bring the data back to the people that you collected it from. You owe it to them. And also how you use it for decision making. So one good thing is that instead of paper and pen, now using data collection, digital data collection, you actually get the results pretty quickly. You can follow them in real time, but just following them real time it's no use unless there are consequences. So you use it for data-driven decision making, and you actually maybe modify the project based on the data. So it's also about organizational change, how your organization is reacting to this more real-time data and how you are able to put it into action and benefit from that. That's a big question, and it's not solved by choosing the tool itself only. It's a much bigger question. Thanks. Yeah, good feedback. I could also show then like how stuff is done in real time, but we can come back to that later. We can also have maybe after a few weeks, if you have tried them out, we can have this hands-on workshop where we try out all kinds of stuff with maybe Copper Toolbox. By the way, one thing is that each of these, ComCare, MacPy, PoiMapper, Survey CTO, Aquaflow, and Copper Toolbox, and all the others, you can get free test account in minutes. So use that opportunity. You don't have to pay anything to test it. The only downside is that usually they come after you. So for example, ComCare, I'm certain you'll get the email and they want to talk to you. And of course, that's great. But they want to get customers as well. But go and you can play around and see how it works. So you can test all of these before making any decisions. Yeah, I'll be doing tutorial videos as well on, and for example, for Copper Toolbox, there's a great tutorial video already done. I need to share it. So it has a step-by-step tutorial of maybe 20 short videos showing you how to use it, all aspects of Coppa Toolbox. If you watch it and follow it and do it, you'll be a master of Coppa Toolbox in almost no time. And then you can also start teaching your fellow peers and get them excited. By the way, one really good way to get your peers excited is actually do a proper survey. So you can, as I was doing with Coppa Toolbox, create a survey with the people so they see how it is done, and then ask them to download the Coppa Toolbox to their mobile phone, share the form survey, and then they can okay, so we'll just have a 5-minute break and then after we continue, and then they can go around, even here in Finland or elsewhere, just go and map, for example, trash bins. Doesn't matter, make it a stupid funny questionnaire. When they go out, they collect the data, they get the first-hand experience of how it is to use. Then they come back to the office or their workplace or their home in the corona era time, and then you can show how you can see all the data, how these trash bins or whatever playgrounds you have been mapping are on the map, and it all comes much more tangible than just saying, yeah, you can do digital data collection. Okay, good. Let's have a pause for 5 minutes. So please stretch, do some push-ups, jump, so that you are excited and energetic. Drink water, go out, whatever. So should we start? Is 5 minutes enough? Or let's have 5 minutes. So I'll close it now, and we'll come back 5 to 2 o'clock Finnish time. So I'll now mute myself and stop the video and have, please jump up and run around. See you soon. Okay, are you there? Almost. Do I need to give some exercise moves so you can get refreshed? Nice. Ten push-ups done, Harry. I have to do the same. I did 100 very quickly. There's actually a trampoline in our yard, and my children, they have been jumping up and down for years, but only now that I've started working from home, I've started jumping there as well. I'm not sure what the neighbors think about it, but it's actually quite fun. So, could you all now, Outi and Karita and Ari, you seem to be online. How about the rest? Are you ready to start? Milla is there as well. Valtteri is, and Senia, Makaya, Betty. Yeah, ready. That's good, Betty. Joel is back. Juha and Jussi. Great. Emma is back. How about Robert? And Mari Totterman. Are you around? All the others. Good. Robert is checking in. Good. So this next session, we'll be talking about group data gathering at OMBEA, and this is done in collaboration with Solidarisuus, International Solidarity Foundation, and Maria Väkiparta is here to share her and her organization's experiences with this. So let's have it two-way. First, I'll fairly quickly show how OMBEA works, and this is not a training. I won't be training you now how to do it. I'll just show quickly what it is all about, and there will be a separate session and a separate video on step-by-step instructions on how to do it. But however, just that you know what it is all about. So let's start here. So this is the package. This is OMBEA, and OMBEAs are actually a series of clickers. They look like this. So there are buttons here, and pretty simple one. And then in the same package, you have a receiver like this. So with the USB. So only thing you need to do is connect the receiver to and then we have the green light here. Now it's connected. Ah, okay. I was supposed to see a video. Good point, Karita. Yes, you are supposed to see the video. Let me. Is anyone else seeing the video? Because you should be able to see both.
Yes, we see, but maybe if you close the or stop the sharing, it will be bigger. People can choose.
Okay. So sorry about that. So this was OMBEA, and here are clickers. this kind of clickers. Can you now see it full screen? You can also select a speaker view from the top right corner. So if you see lots of others there and my video is very small, so you can click it to become big, and you can also pin the video to make it bigger. But anyhow, here is the clicker, and here we have the receiver that I just connected to my laptop. And now I'll switch back to sharing my screen. So here we go. And so now after this, at any time, if you want to use OMBEA, you need to download the software. So it's an add-on to PowerPoint. So you just go to ombea.com/downloads, and you can download this software for free. And you can do a lot of the stuff I'm now showing without paying anything. The only thing that you don't have the clickers, so actually the responses are missing. But you can already practice creating these surveys. And there's also a simulation mode where you can get responses that are automatically generated by the software. But ombea.com/downloads, you download it, you install it, and there you go. So how does it work? So now I have to get away from here, and can you now see my full screen? This is the PowerPoint. I hope so. Yeah, okay. So here, as you can see, this is just a normal PowerPoint with all the familiar toolbars here, except one, because I've installed OMBEA. So now there's an additional toolbar here called OMBEA Response. So this OMBEA Response is fully integrated into the familiar good old PowerPoint. And this is what makes it pretty easy, because you don't really have to learn new software that much. It just adds some functionality. And if I want, I'm just doing a quick one here. So if I want to do interactive slides where people can actually respond to with the clickers, then I just click here, new, and new multiple choice. And the results will be shown as 3D columns. Yeah, I could also take something else, but this is a good one. Now it takes a few seconds. And here it is. So now there's only one response bar, but we could ask, for example, what is your favorite color? And we would then just say blue. Now the chart is being updated. And then we would add white, red, yellow, green. And there we go. Now we have the first question. Then let's take another question, multiple choice. And then we add again a question. Which question would we add? Which of these countries have you visited? And now again, the previous one was you can select only one. Here we have multiple choices. Finland, Uganda, Sweden, Australia, India. So creating surveys with the OMBEA is as easy as this. Now, because we want to have it multiple choice, so I can click here properties. Don't be intimidated by this list. It's pretty easy in any case. I can hear responses per participant. They can respond at up to 5 countries. And so on. So this is the way it goes. Now, if I want to start polling, and if you had these clickers, do you see my video? It would be nice if you had both the video and what I'm seeing here. Try to click so that my video is visible. Did anyone get my video here while watching the screen share? At least Mokaya is, yes, good. So now I have the clickers. I'll hand them to you. It doesn't work, but I hope I was able to give you the clicker, because now when I'll start polling here. I'll click start polling, and I wonder, what do you see now? Well, that was jumping to a wrong place, so there are too many slides here. It's like this, and this is better, I think. Are you now seeing the presenter view or the full screen view? Okay. Now it should be better. And now people can start answering the questions. So they can click just a second. This is getting a bit complicated here with the Zoom open and the video and all of it, but let's see. Okay, so I won't touch it more, but in the end, this is the way you create the surveys. And once you have done the survey, then you just give these clickers that don't need any internet connection, no electricity, nothing, to the people, for example, in a classroom, and then you ask them to respond anonymously, just using these clickers, and then you get the results. You can show them immediately, and you can also export them elsewhere. But this is about the technicalities. How does it look like when it's actually being used in the international development work? So here I would like to ask Maria Väkiparta from Solidarisuus to tell more. So I can stop sharing this. And Maria, are you able to start sharing? I can actually make you a co-host.
Are you seeing my first slide?
Yes. Looks good.
Great. So, hello everyone. It's really, really nice to share our experiences to all of you, and really hope to encourage many of you to introduce this or any other tool. Those of you who participated the last session where Vilja Liikanen from Plan Finland was presenting. So some of you might have scared of the scale and skills and staff and effort put by Plan Finland to introduce these systems, and I maybe want to give you another example of an organization that has much less capacity to introduce such system and basically no prior experience, and yet I would say we have pretty well succeeded with launching the OMBEA use in quite a short time frame too. So Solidaarisuus, or ISF as we abbreviate our name, is a middle-sized development organization with some 3 million annual budget. We are working currently in 3 countries, implementing our projects through local organizations, so we are not implementing ourselves. We are currently having 9 implementing partners in Kenya, Somaliland, and Nicaragua, and we are running altogether 12 projects currently. And our work focuses on preventing violence against women and girls and on empowering women economically. And as you have might have noticed of some of my comments earlier in the chat, so I'm definitely not a technology specialist nor any meal specialist. So actually I'm a thematic advisor at ISF, specializing on prevention of gender-based violence. And yet we have managed to introduce this, so I hope this encourages you. You might remember that Vilja told us how they had a data specialist and IT specialist and knowledge management specialist and many people in-house who were involved in introducing these digital data management tools, but it can be done without such specialty inside the organization. Of course it helps, and I'm very grateful for the help and assistance we've got from Mika, for example. Without his assistance and support, we would not have introduced OMBEA. And yeah, you might remember one of the Mika's first slides when he started presenting, and there were these 3 scenarios of different types of organizations where I would position Plan Finland, for example, in the category C, whereas I would position ISF somewhere between categories or scenarios A and B. So with this introduction, we can then proceed. I have some 6 to 7 slides for you, but let's see how I will get to my next one. No, somehow I'm not getting forward here. You should see a picture from the field, from Somaliland. So this is me, ISF Somaliland country manager, our local training officer, and project manager from one of the implementing partners, presenting the OMBEA to a group of beneficiaries who are about to participate in the first poll. Before going to the details, just maybe a few words about the steps that led us.
Hi Emma. I'm good. Let me just check that I have muted my mic.
Just a few words about the steps how ISF came to purchase OMBEA. So it was, I guess, a year ago when Mika was still working for Plan Finland and was presenting all the different tools that Plan had put to use or even developed for the rest of us MFA partner organizations, and we got quite interested in some of them, and we invited Mika to introduce some of these tools in more detail at ISF Development Days last August, I guess it was. So that's where I wanted to sell the idea to my colleagues, and I was successful. And then pretty much the same time then in October, we made a major breakthrough, and we got a big institutional funding from UN Women managed UN Trust Fund for our work to end female genital mutilation in Somaliland. So that kind of opened a window of opportunity from my perspective and for ISF to try and pilot with OMBEA in the middle of the 4-year program period that we are having on MFA funding. Also, as the new UNTF funding allowed some purchase of new technology. Another important step was that this Somaliland country manager that you see on the picture, the man second from left, visited Helsinki in November last year. So before purchasing anything, we wanted to introduce the OMBEA system to him, for him to assess the suitability and feasibility in the Somaliland context. Also at the same time, Mika, then already working for Fingo, gave us a brief 1-hour training on how to use OMBEA. He showed us the same kind of examples of how to create a poll, how to create a survey, and how to run it. And we had a short trial poll, us being the participants then, who visited Fingo then. And Ahmed thought that the system is applicable in Somaliland, so we purchased the system. We decided to buy 2 sets of 30 response pads. So the small bag that Mika just showed you, the blue one, it contains 30 clickers or response pads or whatever you want to call them. So we decided to purchase 2 sets, and I ordered them to Helsinki as I was about to travel to Hargeisa in January. So I had them with me, small as the packages are, so they were easy to carry along. And there were so many arrangements to be done before I traveled, as we had this huge new project starting, and there were a lot of preparation going on. So I definitely did not have very much time to prepare and test and pilot the system. So what I did, I did a small test poll here at the Helsinki office with 3 colleagues, and then basically I learned the system on plane and at the airport on my way to Hargeisa. What I did, I made some draft survey that could be tested then together with the colleagues in Hargeisa. I see that Betty is in the waiting room. Mika, can you let her in?
Yeah, I'll handle yeah.
Great.
No worries.
So currently we are using now OMBEA in one of our projects, this trust fund project, with 2 of our implementing partners in Somaliland. And I'm actually very happy to have 3 or 4 of ISF colleagues from the Kenyan team to join this session, because I'm very eager to introduce the OMBEA system also in our projects in Kenya. So just to give you an idea of the scope and scale of the project, of the context where we are using OMBEA, this one slide to describe the project. So as I said already, it's about FGM prevention and about empowering women who live in internally displaced people's communities in Somaliland. This is to give the context of the topic being quite sensitive and the context being quite challenging for putting the OMBEA to use. And also the fact that we are not implementing ourselves, we are implementing with 2 local CSOs makes it a bit extra challenging. The magnitude of the projects, so we are aiming to reach 3,500 different kind of change agents all over Somaliland, consisting of CSO members, religious leaders, traditional leaders, journalists, university students, and women's cluster level association members. So there are very many different kinds of groups and categories of people whose awareness and attitudes we must monitor separately. Different categories and also several geographical locations. Then, so that it is not too simple, these change agents in turn are expected to empower 13,500 female IDPs and reach 6,500 parents, who in turn are expected to save 11,000 girls from FGM. So now this OMBEA group data gathering tool is used to monitor the changes in the awareness and attitudes of these different groups regarding FGM or the health risks related to FGM, religious perspectives, changing norms, and their behavioral aims related to FGM. This trust fund project requires us to collect data semi-annually. In terms of most indicators, there are certain goal level, impact level indicators where the data is collected only annually, but for most of the indicators, we collect data semi-annually. So then a few words about what happened then in January when I traveled to Hargeisa to introduce the system to our partners who would then collect the data themselves, which is also a major difference from earlier, where quite often consultants were contracted, especially for baseline data collection. Whereas often the follow-up data, especially at semi-annual level, is collected by our partners. But due to the scarce resources, what often happens, and very often happens in our case, is that the data is collected with pen and paper. And also as the beneficiaries often now are quite scattered geographically, so that means that often we have only opportunity to have quite small sample sizes, which then again means that it's quite challenging to draw any actual conclusions based on the very small samples. And now the project being especially extensive in terms of the numbers of beneficiaries, their variety. So we really needed some technical tool to help us in collecting the data. As it often is, I didn't have too much time when I traveled there. Actually, initially I was supposed to stay in Hargeisa, was it like for 5 days, and to launch the whole project. And this OMBEA launch was only one part of my agenda. Well, luckily I had an opportunity to stay for a few days longer, but it really was a tight agenda and we didn't have time to waste. So what we first did, we came together, ISF local team and our local implementing partners, and we had 1 day OMBEA training. I had already sent them some links and video tutorials, though they were familiar with the basic idea of the OMBEA tool. So what we did then when we got together, we were practicing with the pads. The partner and ISF staff were first being the participants to the poll, so that they had the clickers, while I was the one facilitating a poll. And that already helped us to rephrase my first draft on a plane. On my way to Hargeisa, I had drafted the first draft of the survey. Actually, we are having 3 different surveys for the different groups of beneficiaries. So I had drafted 3 different surveys, which we then tried together. And as the local people better know the local context and the suitable phrases, etc. So we already did some rephrasing on that first day. Then we also changed roles so that those who would then be the facilitators in the pilot polls were the ones leading the polls, while the rest of us were pretending to be the respondents. And thereby we also practiced analyzing the results. And most importantly, we discussed and decided on how we would then deal with the single data set from a single data collection community and group, whether we would save it or empty it. I'm not going into this is a bit technical, but these things that should be decided before actually starting the exercise. And we were exercising in a quite practical terms on how to save a single report, so that we have a bit standardized way of archiving and labeling and naming the documents. And then we made a schedule of how we would manage the pilot polls then the coming days. So then we split so that I joined the teams, one partner team per day, and they had recruited pilot participants. So we went into 2 to 3 villages with each partner, with a bit different kinds of participants, and that was extremely valuable. Regardless of the rephrasing that we had already done, we noticed a lot of changes that had to be made on the polls for them to actually function in those settings with uneducated and actually even illiterate people. So then on the 4th day, we got together and simplified and rephrased the surveys. And also then we were able to finalize the data collection schedules, because then both me and the partners got a bit of better idea of how much time does it actually take to run a single poll. And then there was a lot of homework to be done also after my visit. So the partners took it to themselves to translate the scripts, because of course with them I'm working in English. But definitely we cannot ask questions in English when we go to the rural remote villages, meeting uneducated illiterate people. So then what they did the Somali translations, whereas I then decided to write one-pager OMBEA guidelines that we actually required each and every enumerator to sign, to thereby prove that he or she has read and understood the guidelines. What I also did, that I drafted Excel templates for the partners then to populate the data that they collect in the villages with the OMBEA. Then what happened? Actually the next slide is just to show you the OMBEA document hierarchy as it was planned to build up. And this is a very simplified and amputated version. If you look at from down up, so in this picture there are 4 reports, automatically created OMBEA reports coming from different geographical locations and groups of people. In reality, for partner A, they produced around 20-30 reports, whereas the partner B, which has even bigger variety in locations, produced some 50 automatic OMBEA reports. And that was produced automatically with OMBEA very easily. Then what happened was that as mentioned in the previous slide, so I had created Excel sheets where they then manually populated the data from those OMBEA reports. And thereby, by the end of January, if I recall correct, I got then 2 reports from each partner. And then I manually populated that data in my summary Excel. And this is where there are options for automatization and connection to other tools. We had some talks here some week ago with Mika and Vilja from Plan, how we could, for example, do some more automatization by, for example, utilizing Power BI, but I'm not going into that as I have not been able to familiarize with that yet. So let's see, but maybe the message here is that it can also be done with Excel pretty easily if you're familiar with using Excel. Once you draft a good enough Excel, then it's quite easy actually. The biggest work is to draft the Excel, and it really takes careful thinking, as data collection always takes, on which actually numbers are to be summed up, etc. So, but once you've done that thinking, it's rather easy, I would say, to populate the data in that Excel. But then some challenges that we had, and I think this is maybe the beef of my presentation. I also have another slide where I then want to share the opportunities, but let's start with the challenges that using OMBEA might have. So the picture, by the way, is from one of the pilot villages. It gives quite a typical picture of the setting where we run the data collection in Somaliland. So this is a local village house and a school where the partner has invited 30 beneficiaries to participate the baseline survey. And up front there, it's me and then our local partner staff who are explaining the OMBEA system to the participants. And as you can see, it's quite crowded, which puts some challenges on the anonymity, for example. So people sitting next to each other might see each other's replies. Also, even if OMBEA as such enables you to run a group data collection pretty quickly, it takes three times as much time to set up and organize the people. So it's not that clear that you just invite X number of people and then if maybe for survey purposes it would sometimes be good, for example, to divide them by gender. And what we wanted to do especially was to divide them by group, because we had different categories. So in ideal case, we would have had first, for example, only religious leaders, and then in the next poll, only traditional leaders, and then in the next one, only parents. But you have to take into consideration the social setting. So there, for example, in the Somaliland case, there are different kind of clan affiliations and social hierarchies that people, for example, want to make sure that their representative is there present when the poll is run, and they somehow seem to consider the situation as some kind of an election, it seems, at some point. So they wanted to make sure that their representative is there to present them. So sometimes it took 30 minutes. In some of the cases, it took actually an hour to organize people and before we even could start explaining the system. But then, of course, the good thing is that then it will be mostly the same respondents to the follow-up data collection. So then they are more familiar with the system. So then there are some choices, difficult choices you have to do concerning the simplicity of the poll versus data richness, especially if your respondents are illiterate, for example. So what we noticed, for example, in the original poll for the parents, for example, we had some, was it like 5 to 6 sociodemographic background questions before we started the actual survey questions. And we noticed, first of all, that people actually really endure some 10, maximum 15 questions. So every warm-up question, every background question we had actually was out of the focus on the actual survey questions. So that made us decrease the number of background questions then when we got back to office and simplify the poll. Another clear conclusion was that multiple response questions could not be run with this audience. It was very confusing to the people. And even if only one option was available, even then we noticed that it's better the less alternatives there are. So in most cases, then we ended up with only 2 options, yes or no, or true or false, or something like that. So doing those changes then made us run the polls, or facilitate the polls pretty easily. Then questions around anonymity, even if OMBEA as such is brilliant in terms of anonymity because it doesn't have any identifiers. You are fully anonymous using the clicker. But it doesn't help much if people are shouting aloud their answers assisting each other technically to use the clickers, which often makes them see each other's replies and even impact each other's replies. So these things then must be taken into consideration and mitigated where possible. But as you see, for example, the setting here in the picture, there wasn't much opportunity for people to sit apart from each other. We tried then when we noticed this problem, we did what we could, but basically the problem remains. But of course, one easy solution is to have enough staff available, enough facilitators, so that it's your staff or the enumerators who assist technically and not people assisting each other. And I must say there was actually not that much assistance needed after the first 2-3 questions. Then people very quickly learned the system. And another issue with anonymity and safety and security, this is a bit of an ethical issue, is whether to what extent to show the results. First, we were thinking that it would be actually good and ethical to share the results. As Mika just showed you, the OMBEA creates the results right there in a second. So you can show the results, how your group replied. And it's good to create trust in the OMBEA system so that people realize that how do the replies that they give actually become a data and statistics. And also it might be interesting for them to see what is, for example, the amount of people or the share of people in their village supporting specific type of female genital mutilation, for example. So, but then there is the downside is that if there is, for example, out of the 30 people, if let's say 29 reply that they support the most severe pharaonic type of FGM, and then there's one reply stating that he or she doesn't, or that person doesn't support any type of FGM or would like the practice to end. Even though it remains fully anonymous who that person is, but if that one reply would be so different from the majority stand, it might give people or make them actually ask around and question and try to find out who that deviant person is. So those kinds of risks must be taken into consideration. So we decided that we then in the future only show the results of the warm-up questions, which in our case are socio-demographic background questions. For example, what is your gender? So that through those exemplary questions, people see how the system works, but then the rest of the questions we keep to ourselves. Actually, then we fill in this very quantitative OMBEA data with qualitative data collection methods, focus group discussions, and key informant interviews. And in those sessions, we then dig out deeper the numbers and percentages behind the OMBEA results. Version control, I don't know if this is the correct term, as not being a technology, IT, or M&A specialist. So with this, I mean that because there is no web-based templates or forms when you use OMBEA, as there were in many of the other tools that Mika presented in the first section of our session today. So this OMBEA means that we downloaded the OMBEA on our computers, but as we are from 3 different organizations, ISF, and then our 2 local partners who do their data collection separately, so we all had to download it on our computers. So, and then we were revising these questionnaires, and even though I said that we have 3 different polls, so unfortunately it's not that simple that each one would have their poll. No, we share the polls so that both implementing partners are using the same poll with, for example, those religious leaders that are engaged in their project or they're part of the project. So it's been very challenging to ensure that they are always utilizing the latest version. And there was actually a very unfortunate error that happens, so that when I left Hargeisa and they continue with the data collection, so one of the partners accidentally utilized a wrong poll, which actually then made the data fully invalid. So that can happen. Then also you have to be very careful and guide very detailed on how to save the data, or whether to empty the data after polling, how to archive, what kind of report format to choose. OMBEA allows you to produce, I'd say, tens of different kinds of reports. So I suggest if you introduce this system to familiarize with the different reports and carefully consider your needs, and then choose the kind of report. At least in our case, because we then decided that we will always empty the data after the poll. So the report that is produced there at place is then the report that we have to live with, and there is no access to data afterwards. But that was our choice. OMBEA also allows you to save all the data along all the years. There were another example of a small error that happened was when the partners were translating the polls that we revised together in Somali. So for summary purposes, we had decided that always the first option is the so-called correct option, which in most cases was yes. So the options were 1 yes, 2 no, and the yes often being the correct. But then in some of the polls or some of the questions, it was the other way around, so that the no was the correct answer. So, and when they quite in a hurry did the translations, so then all the answer options remain in the same order. So it was always yes, number 1, and 2 was no. So you understand that when then actually it was different way around in the English and Somali poll, it made actually the wrong reply the right reply. So these human errors are still there, even with the technical system, because it's still us who design the surveys and who populate the data and etc. And yeah, there is always the opportunity for all, even if you have like valid or correct data, you can always populate wrong, especially in our case when we do that manually. And also on my end, as I did the templates and I did the summary actually, so I'm always a bit insecure. Luckily, I have Robert who checked my formulas, but when you pull data from several Excels, so you really have to be careful that how with your formulas when like pulling the data from many sheets and many rows and many columns. So that's still there. Let's see. Oh yeah, I guess my last emerging issue, careless mistakes, is there behind my picture. So I think that's it about the challenges. So then next about the opportunities and advantages with using OMBEA, and there are many, as you see our group here very happily smiling after successful polling sessions. So actually this is right after the setup you saw in the previous picture. So this is us smiling. And the major advantages, I would say, are the anonymity, despite the deficiencies I had in the previous slide. And then the efficiency. It of course depends on what systems you are using currently. So what are you comparing with? But as I said in our case, so we have mostly been using pen and paper, and also not really being able to carry out group data collection. So what we've been doing is one-to-one or household data collection with very, very small sample sizes. So and our topics being quite sensitive, so the anonymity that OMBEA brings along is very big advantage, as well as the efficiency, taking into consideration the huge amount of beneficiaries and locations in this project. So this using now OMBEA allows us to finally have sample sizes that are statistically sufficient. And for me, that is quite big thing, as I've struggled with the very, very small samples we've received in many of our projects so far. So then, of course, the issue that Mika already mentioned, that we get immediately the reports. It's right there. It's just one push of a button, just a second after the poll, you get the results right there. That's really good thing. And then you kind of, there is no loss of data from the field to the office, or from the local office to the main office. So that is excellent, and it makes enumerators a lot more efficient when they don't have to do that much paperwork. Standardization. I don't know if the rest of you have struggled with the same, but often we have had the problem of having pretty similar program level indicators that are then interpreted and translated into quite different kind of indicators on the project level, and then again transformed or translated into very different kind of questionnaires and research questions at the ground level. So sometimes it's quite difficult then to pull or compile the data, and you really have to do a lot of thinking every time you get the annual data from the field to pull it together and consider what can actually be summed up. And the same things and same issues can have been asked in so many different ways. So now, at least in this one project that is kind of divided into two by there being two implementing partners, so now at least we have a standardized questions that they both use with similar target groups and beneficiaries. So that for me has been a big improvement. And then something that I didn't realize actually from beginning, but I noticed when I was there in Somaliland with our local team and with the partners, was the engagement and even enthusiasm and ownership of the data collected from their side. If the baseline data is collected by external consultant, it quite often happens that the project staff is not really that engaged in the data, and whenever there is any problem in interpreting the data, it's quite difficult because you don't know what the data has eaten, so to say. So now, when there were, for example, weird results in some of the polls, in some of the questions, I started wondering, and that's actually how we came out to notice that there was this translation bug or problem, that the yes had become no, and so forth. So, and it was easy to track down that problem ourselves, because we were so familiar with the system and down to the level of the actual questions asked. So that's the main advantages with the system. I have one more slide which is also a kind of simplified version of the OMBEA guidelines that I drafted for the partners, but I don't think we need to go it word by word. You will certainly have the presentation and you can browse it through. In these guidelines, I tried to take into consideration some of the pitfalls that emerge by then, and explain in a very detailed manner how to proceed before going to the field, when in the community before polling, and then when polling.
Thanks, Maria. These are excellent points to share with those who want to try out OMBEA. Now that we have a few minutes left before we stop here, maybe we take a couple of questions before then going to the closing part. Thanks, Maria, very much. Super interesting to hear that analysis. There was a question from, let me see here, from Senia. It would be nice to get a couple of examples of the questions and choices asked, especially of those where Maria said they noticed the need for revision of the first trials. I don't know if you have immediately some of the examples available.
I would have the final versions where we ended up, but then I must say I cannot recall the original versions. In big picture, the thing was that there were multiple choices and that didn't work. Also, as we tried to be very ethical when phrasing the questions, we tried to avoid any formulations or phrasings that kind of would uphold any harmful social norms or stereotypes. So then sometimes the questions became a bit too complicated. Kind of what would be an example? So do you think that wife beating is not acceptable? But then every time if you put, for example, not there, it becomes difficult. So unfortunately, it's often better to ask straightforward, even though sometimes the question may become a bit offending.
Alla, Ari is asking, did you have any problems in customs at the airport?
I was afraid of that, but no problem at all.
Yeah, I've been checked quite a many times because when you scan that package of clickers, it looks like it's kind of ammunition or something, but every time I would open it up and explain what it is, I never had any problems. So that's it seems to be pretty okay. Just a quick comment before we go to the closing here. The first part was about mobile data gathering tools, and now this was about group data gathering tools. So are these interchangeable? Not really, because the mobile data gathering is good when you are going from one place to another and typically interviewing one person at a time. And then with the mobile data gathering tool, you can take photos, you can take video, you can have free form text, and stuff like that. So in that case, it's more versatile. Where this kind of group data collection tool and clickers, I'll show a couple of, where these are useful, especially when you have people together in larger groups, and then you can ask questions with different alternatives at the same time, and then you can gather lots of data fairly comparatively quickly, although you need to do the preparations as well. I'll show a couple of photos from the places. Do you see this photo?
Yes.
Yeah, so similar kind of photos where these have been used in a very low resource setting, as you can see, and then utilizing the laptop and a projector to project those alternatives. Here's the OMBEA clickers, and typically these kind of schools going from one place to another and asking those questions, as you can see, just using sheets with masking tape put there, it's enough, and then using those clickers. Luckily, those clickers can be put under the table if people are listening to instructions to keep the anonymity, but as Maria well explained, there can be all kinds of challenges, so testing beforehand is needed. And there is a photo of setting different teams, so with the OMBEA clickers and different groups, and dividing people to different groups that are going from one place to another. With similar kind of experiences there. So now, thank you very much, Maria, for that. Great to hear, and I hope that others, when you are doing different kind of digital data collection, you are also then invited to share your experiences later on. So there's going to be peer learning here. This was the second part of these digital data collection online sessions, and we'll certainly have more. So it also depends on your needs, your wishes, what type of session we'll have the next time. And for that, Outi was asking about the price. No, that was not mentioned. That is, you can check the price of one 30 clicker is around 2,000 euros, and the price of 50 clickers is around maybe 2,600. So the initial price, you could say, is a bit high, but then again, with the price of one baseline done with consultancies, then you can get these clickers, quite many packages, and there are no further costs of, for example, licenses and so on. But that's around the cost point. Then let's go to the last slide. Let me show it here, and I now want to hope I can get one link. Don't go away yet. So swapping this, and okay, good. And I'm sure if you have further questions to Maria, you can connect via email later on to have more discussions. Now, it's almost on the top of the hour, so please kindly give feedback, anonymous feedback for this training session. This doesn't cost anything, but if you can give something back is your feedback, that would be very much appreciated. And also there you can suggest what other type of, or what would be the theme for the next session. So if you are inspired to hear more about anything, just write it there. And there you can see the link, and I'm now going to copy that link to the chat window. Where's the chat? There. I think I have too many. There you go. So please do it now, immediately. Otherwise, you'll go to have a funny weekend and then forget about it. So go and see the link in the chat window, fill it in, and then after that, have a very nice weekend. If you have any quick comments, you can write them on the chat window, but otherwise, do it to the feedback form and then submit it. Otherwise, I thank you very much for staying with us for the 2.5 hours. I thank Solidarisuus and Maria Väkiparta for doing the collaboration here and sharing the experiences. and insights. Yeah, and please do come back with any questions. Go to the Powerbank website, which is fingo.fi/Powerbank. There you can see also all kinds of material, and these kind of tutorials and webinars and video trainings will be coming up there once we produce them. Okay, now it's top of the hour, so thanks.
Thank you from my side as well. Feel free to contact